Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Christine.
Hello.
Hello. Goodbye. No.
No. Okay. Night.
Night. What's going on? How are you? Today's going to be a weird episode. I can already feel
How
it.
do you know? Because I know, but I didn't know if you knew.
I already know because, as you know, well, they think it was a week ago, but as of yesterday, I was like debilitatingly ill. And then I slept for a very, very long time last night, and I refused to wake up until I felt better.
I love doing that where you're like, no, sleep more. You force yourself to sleep more.
I pulled an ultimatum on my own body, and so I went to sleep at 6 p.m. and I woke up at 9:45 a.m. So I just truly slept almost a whole. I was like, I don't even care if I'm wide awake. I'm closing my eyes until I'm tired again, and then I finally woke up and I'm good.
I'm so proud of you. That's amazing.
Okay. Thank you, because you saw me yesterday. I was not doing hot.
I've seen you every day.
You have. It's been a road. So anyway, now that I've got all my energy back, and I also slept for like 15 hours, I have a lot to offer. So,
jeez. Oh, okay.
Good for you.
None of us asked for it, but thank you for offering.
You're welcome. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. Thank you. I also feel the energy buzzing. Buzzing, for lack of a better word.
Oh, that was our energy texting me. Whoops.
Was that a text? I was like, wow, you really just emulated the sound of your text message perfectly. I thought that was pretty
It was pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have a lot to say.
Okay.
So
the floor is yours.
Okay. First of all, I received, I haven't mentioned this ever, but I'd like to finally give a shout out to my Secret Santa, Taryn, who sent me this cozy blankie.
Ooh, and what's on it?
It's like a big dragonfly.
Oh, fun.
I don't know. I just was like, oh, cute, a cool blanket. And then I've just become so obsessed with it. Like, I don't know what it is, but now it's my studio blanket and I always have it and it's very soft. And I keep it up here in my office. This was for and that's where I drink. I think it was a Patreon Secret Santa. I'm not sure. But, and I got to send a gift to someone named Siobhan, which I know is a name we've talked about on the show.
Hi, Siobhan.
Not that specific Siobhan, obviously, but, yeah.
What did you get, Siobhan? So we can
gosh.
Judge your gift giving.
A lot of stuff, just like a whole mishmash, like a big box, a couple things from their wish list, because I was like, okay, I want to get them stuff they actually want. But then, of course, I put all sorts of fun, I secretly anonymously asked if they had any pets, and so I added some stuff for the cats, and it was a good time. I just love doing it, and our pal Jess, headed it up this year, or I guess it was last year, in December, and so I'm delayed, but I just wanted to say thank you for that. And then, Em, can you ask me why I drink?
Yes. Why do you drink?
It's like the first time you've ever been invited to do that.
I love when I get to interact, when I'm asked to interact, because I always have the social anxiety of like, do you really want me to do this? But then when you ask,
I doubt that. I always have the social anxiety. I'm like, since when?
I just mine just manifests in me acting like I try to really pull off the confidence thing.
I see.
So, anyway, why do you drink?
I'm really into birds right now.
Well, okay.
I'm really into birds right now. All right. And
for those of you who are not on YouTube, Christine just whipped out a fucking compendium of birds of Kentucky, and I should ask where you got that from, but honestly, you could have just found it on the side of the road and been like, I'm taking it home.
They do have a couple of those free libraries on the side of the road. It's very possible. No, I'm just really.
What happened?
I'm really into birds right now.
How did we get here? Is what I'm trying to ask. What's the story?
It's been a long and storied road. Let's go back to the beginning. When I was young, no, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to give you a whole spiel, but I was always very afraid of birds, and for good reason. My stepmom took me to Tern Island when I was probably 12. I was like 13, and Tern Island is like a habitat where they rehabilitate terns, Tern, which are like this sea bird. It's sort of like a seagull. And we arrived on this island, and my brother faked sick that day. So it was just me, my stepmom, my dad, and then a couple other people. We took a little boat out to Tern Island. And then the moment we arrived, they handed us all pointed sticks.
No.
And they said, the birds know that humans' weaknesses are their eyes. And I said, excuse me?
Your brother was so smart to bail.
He talks about it to this day. He's like, remember that time I made you go to Tern Island by yourself?
He really, I mean, I can't think of to be like, all of that sounds bad. And for you who's terrified of birds to go, I'm still going to go.
I couldn't get out of it. Like, he literally pulled the card so aggressively that he had a stomach ache that, like, I couldn't also bail. He took all of that energy. You know what I mean? Like, he took the, like, play sick card that day. And my stepmom was like, we already bought the tickets. They were so expensive. So I had to go. And that Christmas, my stepmom gifted me this giant wooden tern. And I dropped it. I was so afraid when I opened it. And we had to wear hats with flowers on them to blend in to the botany on the island so that they wouldn't see us and go for our eyeballs. It was so upsetting. And I've always been afraid of crows as well because they're very smart and they have facial recognition software. That's what I call it. And they know.
Well, birds aren't real, right? We're all
birds are also not real. That's the underlying current of all this for sure. But so anyway, the point is, I've always been afraid of birds, and so this year I was like, let's look inward and really think about this issue because I love animals, and I'm like, why do I not like birds? I always used to say I hate birds, and now I'm kind of like, you know what? Maybe there's something to it. Like, they're so smart, but that's really cool. So now I'm just embracing it. And I found a couple birds on TikTok that, like, some crows that know how to do like shape games, and they're very freakishly smart. They bring you presents. And so I'm really into birds right now. And then I found that that thing I told you about where I got my mother-in-law that bird buddy where it, like, the Ring doorbell basically takes pictures of the birds that show up, and it's extremely expensive. So I've been considering buying myself one maybe as a birthday gift because it comes out in June. Yeah, so that's that. Anyway, I'm really into birds right now. Why do you drink? Is it because I'm really into birds right now?
It's because I'm not into birds right now, and it's probably going to stay that way.
Well, I'm also into possums. All the things that you're not into, I kind of glom onto.
Everything seems like a stand with you. Like, you're just
it's not. I just am enjoying animals. Leave me alone.
I know, but it's almost as if you know how to pre-select the things that you're going to be invested in that I have no interest in.
Okay, well, what are you interested in? I'm interested in elephants. Okay, birds. Okay, possums.
Just
dogs.
I feel like every time it's a random animal. It's a new animal.
I'm sorry.
What's next week?
Is there a very selective list that you follow of the only animals I'm supposed to be interested in?
Well, I feel like because I don't like
golden retrievers.
I don't like fish. I feel like I will not be surprised the day you become a big fish person.
No.
Oh, well, that changed it up. Okay.
Although, hang on, it's not entirely true because I do like octopuses,
and
squids.
I'm fine with that
because they're very smart.
I mean, I don't want to interact with one, but I'll look at it and not be fully disgusted.
They're cool.
Yeah, I'm impressed with how smart they are and how they can get in through like a keyhole and shit.
And an octopus can open a jar. I can't even open a jar.
Well, they have 8 arms, to be fair.
That's true.
If we had 8 arms, we could probably open a lot of things too.
Excellent point.
All at the same time.
That's right.
As long as you don't get involved in fish and make me go to like an aquarium with you, we're probably solid. But other than that, you do whatever you want.
Thank you.
But also, I don't want to be involved with this bird nonsense or the possum nonsense. Yeah, not at all. But Eva does. I know she does.
I know. I feel her energy vibrating through the screen.
And it's always, I think what I hate is like is that you and Eva always team up on it. Like
we're not teaming up, you're invited. You just reject the invitation. I feel like you frame it as like, oh, we're just not allowing you into the club, and that's not true.
I don't think that.
Okay.
But it is weird that as soon as one of you like said the word possum, the two of you became obsessed with possums.
Well,
and I'm like, how did that happen? What happened?
How did it not happen? I mean, I'm just
probably because you guys travel together when we're on tour, and like I've been like I usually like will stay in my hotel room. So I think the two of you just like form bonds when I'm not in the room.
No,
and then I show up and all of a sudden like you have everything possum and bird, and I'm like,
I'll be honest, I think for that maybe it was that, but in general, I think Eva and I just have a very similar
You do.
outlook on like very specific
Everything.
things. like food, we have very similar outlooks on like food and beverage, like alcohol, food, and then animals. I feel like we have very similar, like we
Your
even
interests-
found out we like support the same shelter, you know, like this like monthly donations.
And you like the same video games, you read the same books, like everything interest wise.
We have a very similar
palate.
taste for life. Palate, yes, that's a great way to put it. Yes.
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
and you're always invited, but like it's just not your jam.
But my palate is the complete opposite. So every time you guys are into something, I'm like, oh,
but
brother,
you
here's
guys have
another
Marvel.
thing.
I don't know nothing about that.
But
you
we
guys
don't
have Marvel.
We don't have Marvel though. We had Marvel during quarantine. And then Eva got a girlfriend and never watched a single Marvel production again.
Okay, now we're just going on
It's
Eva.
the truth, and she knows it. I have been saying
your girlfriend watches them with you, all right? Come
That's
on.
true. But Eva and I, we went through a phase where we watched everything together, and then she would not watch one of the shows. And she knows, I know she's listening to us right now, and she knows exactly what's happening.
Baha in the group chat. I don't know what that was directed toward. Maybe all of the above.
I think all of the above, because we were very on board, and like we weren't watching things until we watched them together and things like that. And then like one show she could not get through, and now she's very far behind.
Maybe consider something. Maybe it's because she was trying to get on board with your interests, right? Mm-hmm. And like you've never tried to get on board with our interests, you know, you've never been on board with the opossum thing. Not even, in fact, you've been off board, like so far off board. You've been like floundering on a life raft far away. And
That's
saying, I refuse to come back aboard.
That's true. I have offered to tread in the ocean while you ship away. Okay, that's fair. That's a good point.
And I wanna also give, because we've never even talked about this. People are probably like, what are you talking about, opossums? Real quick, and I'm not gonna make this a big thing, I promise. But Eva found this store in New Orleans, and long story short, Eva got robbed at dinner and like had to get her fanny pack got stolen along with her cards and our business card. It was just like on Halloween, by the way. And it was like a really tough time. And then she discovered this store, based on Sesame the opossum, and who was like a what do you call it? What is wrong with me? Oh, an Instagram possum.
Like a celebrity possum.
I'm like, what do you call it? An Instagram possum. That's right. That's the word.
A socialite. A media socialite.
Socialite, yeah. And unfortunately, he passed away. But the owner or the person who helped like rehabilitate Sesame now rescues other possums and takes care of them and has a store in New Orleans. And if you go to New Orleans, you freaking have to go to the store. Okay, it's called Coco Alley Vegan Boutique. They sell like the store you walk in, and the store is just like possums. Like you're drowning in possums. And one of my good friends,
about it.
Julio, is like obsessed with possums. So of course I went in and I bought him like one of everything, to the point where I walked out of the store. I couldn't carry all my bags. And then halfway down the block, they came back out and they were like, you forgot some of your bags inside. And I'm like, oh my God. I like went too wild. But then guess what? The owner came to our live show and like came backstage, and we were hoping there might be a little baby possum in her pocket, because sometimes she takes them with her, but there was no possum in her pocket.
An opossum in her pocket.
An opossum in her pocket. But anyway, Coco Alley Vegan Boutique is amazing. Eva even got me like a Ouija board possum canvas that I'm going to hang up right here behind me. Anyway, so I just feel like they deserve a shout out. Everything in their store is vegan also, and they have some art of other animals that maybe Em would be slightly more into? Question mark? I don't know. Oh no. Em froze. All right, Em like bailed on the conversation and quit Zoom. Not really, but it felt that way. And you were right to do so, because I was talking too much. My
computer glitched and I apparently fell out of Zoom, but it looked like I just waltzed away from the conversation.
The screen just went black. But to be fair, this is the next thing I wanted to say. I know, guys, I'm almost done, I promise. The next thing I wanted to say is that I have kind of a ghosty story. Em was there, so it's probably not that exciting, but it meant something to me, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I feel like this just leads right into it, because we were on a podcast recently called The Witching Hour with Patty Negri.
Mm-hmm.
She was a delight. We had so much fun.
A peach. She's a peach.
And hilarious too. And so you should go check that out. But like so the morning before we recorded, I was at my dad's house fixing something for him because he's out of town. And I saw a picture of my grandma, and I hadn't thought about her in a while. And I saw the photo, and in my head, I said, "Hey, Oma, I'm going to be talking to a psychic medium later today. So if you want to say hi or send me a sign, you can do so." So we hop on this call, and the interview begins. And literally the second she's like, "And welcome to the show," the power in my house just like you hear that like everything shuts down. I'm suddenly plunged into darkness, and I'm like, seriously, like that was your freaking sign? You just unplugged the electricity. You took me off the grid. And then I checked, and all our neighbors were still on. So I don't know like what happened. The power just
she was like, I don't want us to make a connection today,
yeah,
babe. So
she's like, no celebrity mediums. I'm a good Catholic woman. Anyway, so that happened. And as you were just disappearing off the screen, I was sitting there talking to Eva, and my computer screen just went like completely black, like just dark. And I thought, did my computer just die?
You opened yourself up to like a ghost computer virus.
I feel really weird now because like the screen just went black, and then I was suddenly kicked out after you were kicked out, and my computer just turned itself off. And I'm like, it's at 100% battery. There's no reason. Anyway, I don't know what's going on, but if this is my Oma, I'd really appreciate she not like, oh, now Eva got kicked off.
Eva just got kicked off.
What's happening? Maybe it's not my grandma. Maybe it's somebody else. I will say Patty introduced us to a haunted doll, and I'm a little afraid we maybe ticked her off. So I don't know.
I didn't do anything. I waved and said hello to her. And
I did blame her for the electricity going out. So
that's not my fault.
That wasn't good.
Well, one thing you wanna tell me your favorite part about that show, Christine?
I don't remember.
The affirmation you got about your favorite little friend.
Oh, I thought you meant the Zach Bagans comment where she said he's her soulmate. But no, okay. The other little friend I have. Okay, we said in the interview, you know, there was this time, and I don't think we've really talked about it on the podcast, but there was a time where we felt like things were just going completely awry in the most comical ways. Anyway, listen to her podcast to hear about that. But we felt almost like it was like a hex or a curse, or like something was put on us where things just were going like hysterically wrong all the time. And she said, oh, well, there's a good way to kind of negate this kind of energy and cleanse your group and your space. And we're like, oh, really? What is it? She says, it's called a lemon cleansing. And I'm like, this has to be a fucking joke. And she goes, what you do is you take a lemon, and M's face is
dropped,
and not having it.
The whole interview, thank God they would focus on like one face at a time, because I was silent, and my face, I probably was rolling my eyes the whole time.
Em and I were just staring daggers at each other. Like
you can tell when you're on Zoom and you're looking at a certain person, and they know that you're looking at them.
You're trying not to make it obvious.
I was doing that with Christine, being like, are you kidding me? She's giving us a whole ritual on lemons.
A lemon ritual. Are you kidding? Yeah. And she said, oh, you take the lemon and you put salt in it and you say this. She's like, it's in my book. You say this thing and you basically lemons banish bad energy. And I went, Patty, I need you to understand what you're saying to us right now. And I even said like, hey, by the way, we had this lemon and I found it under a bed. And she's like, oh, good. That means it was there to banish bad energy. And I'm like, yeah, but I took it with me. Like, I don't know if that's good or bad.
It sounds like it caused the issues.
Yeah, I feel like maybe it contains all the bad energy and I just pocketed it, you know, in my
It's just sitting in my closet
pocket.
right now. Yeah.
And then put it in M's house. So anyway, that was my favorite part when she goes, it's called a lemon ritual. And I said, you've got to be psychic. You are definitely psychic. Like, not that I ever questioned it, but like, you know what you're doing, lady.
Well, we will end this intro on a high for you and me trying to leave you with an olive branch of sorts.
Okay.
A reason to come to Fredericksburg is my step-sibling actually their first job was at this place, I think. And it opened last year. It is called Possumbilities.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. It is. And it's a candy store, but possum themed. I think
it's called Opossumbilities?
No, just Possumbilities. Not the opossum, which is what it is actually called. But Possumbilities.
They're actually called either one. Anyway.
And they have marsupial Mondays where if you like If you buy a certain amount, then you get to go upstairs and play with the possums upstairs.
I can't deal with this. Eva, we have plans. And I also want to point out, oh my God, a little stuffed possum heading to Germany. Sorry, their page is great. I want to also say that Eva texted and said, oh no, my power just went out right as you were talking about power outages. And I'm like, this is just...
I hate this.
Something's going on. I'm sorry to whichever adult. Also, she talked about PTD with her first name. And I was like, oh, we don't do that, man.
It was literally so bold. She was like, oh yeah, well, she held PTD's hand. She was like, well, I held their hands. And I was like, you know what, girl, can you stop saying the full name? Can you just, we go by PTD.
Your show and you can say whatever you want. But
I even said, I was like, on our show when we've said it, people have gotten in car crashes and gotten nosebleeds. And she went, oh yeah, one time, like, I said it in front of someone, they had a heart attack. And I was like,
she goes, and they were too young to have a heart attack. I was like, girl, you are bold as can be, my friend.
Or something involving heart attacks. And I was like, so stop saying the name.
You literally said, oh, people have had nosebleed car crash. And she goes, oh yeah, and heart attacks. And we were like, girl, no. Anyway, your turn.
My turn. Great. Well, also let me know if there's anything you want on this. They have a lovely site too, not just the
my
store.
cart's already full. Don't worry.
Have you seen the mouse pad? Because I feel like that's
I'm
right
mailing
up your
you
alley.
something.
No, you're not.
Okay, fine. I'm mailing Eva something.
Hold on, now someone's calling me? Who the hell is that?
Is it
decline?
Is it PTD?
I don't know. It won't let me decline. Hang on.
I'm telling you, something is up, and we felt the energy the second we started.
I just have to wait it out.
Something is up.
Do you hear it?
No.
Oh, I don't know if you could hear
my mom just said, we need to talk in 4 minutes. I'm like, what? What's going on?
I'm getting the craziest whiplash from this episode.
Is scary. I'm like a little bit afraid.
Okay, let's get out of here quickly. Okay, so let's start with my topic, as we do, and just begin.
As we do. Okay, let's get back to basics.
This is episode 315, I think. And the topic of today is the
charcuterie.
Oh. They're witch trials. Torsåker witch trials. Torsaker, but we're in Sweden, so it's definitely not Torsåker.
Toaskar.
Yeah, I had a pronunciation link to it, and
that seemed to work pretty well for you.
Okay. Well, my computer's doing this thing now where I can't click on links. I have to like highlight it and copy and paste it into the bar. It's very frustrating.
On? Also, Eva, I think we can hear you in the background.
Hi, Eva.
I'm like somebody's laughing, and then I look at M, and M's not amused by what I'm saying. So I'm like, it's something either Peggy is sorry, I said her name. Either maybe she retroactively knew, like maybe she knew I was going to say her name and she's like, I'll just get started now to fuck up your equipment.
I told everybody this was going to be a weird episode, and I hope you believed me, and I hope you were here for the ride.
Oh, boy.
Okay, so let's get into this witch trial situation. So we're in Sweden, and by the mid-1300s, sorcery has been outlawed by Sweden. So by the 1600s, there was a lot of anti-witchcraft litigation. But at first, I do want to say there were levels of witchcraft at the time. There was like healing magic and herbcraft was allowed, and even like Catholics were participating in spells because they were protecting their livestock.
I love how it's like, rituals and stuff are okay if it's like for capitalist purposes or like it's fine if you just want to keep your animals safe or like make money on crops, but otherwise back off.
And also, like, I would like to make it clear that I feel like all religious people are involved somehow in their own version of witchcraft.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, like, what is a prayer if not a spell? Like, what is
exactly?
Like, it's all the same. It's all the same. So anyway, you could be fined at the time because people were protective of this space. You could be fined for accusing someone of witchcraft because it was not to be messed with. It was like
checks and balances thing.
Yes, it was lovely.
Cool.
However, because witchcraft eventually became a spiritual crime, not like a government crime, the church was punishing people.
Oh boy.
So we dive in quick.
Oh boy.
So originally the punishments could be public shaming, shunning, even taking a beating, which is just awful. But
Ugh.
as the Protestant Reformation spread through Sweden, Catholic prayers became known as bad magic, and practices started becoming devilish, demonic, however you want to
All
say
this
it.
shit is like so cyclical. God, cyclical.
Oh my God. Okay.
Just
So
let's move on.
Okay, the church got more involved in civil courts, and witchcraft became more of a secular crime because of that.
Sure.
So the Christians avoided it, I suppose, avoided getting the axe.
Good for them.
So now that it's becoming more of a secular crime, by 1550, the first woman in Sweden is executed for witchcraft.
Oh boy.
And her name is Lasses. I'm doing like the most American version of this, I guess, dialect wise. But Lasses Birgitta of Oland.
Okay.
And by the 17th century, there was a wave of hysteria. So only like 50 years later, really 100 years later, because it was the mid 1600s. But from 1668 to 1676, there were so many witch persecutions that one 8-year period is known as the Great Noise.
Oh, that's the like single-handedly most creepy phrase to use.
It's eerie, yeah.
Yes.
And so it all begins in 1667 when a 12-year-old,
Oh boy.
let's remember that, her name is Gertrude Svensdotter. And Sven's daughter?
That's
Is that
so
what that means?
cute.
Sven's daughter? Okay.
I bet, because I feel like a lot of those names came from those same kind of
like just a title or something.
what's a bathtub? What's that word? A compound noun.
A tub? A bathtub? What?
Like isn't like
A
when you
bathtub.
combine two words, it's like a compound. Is it a compound word? Like
Oh,
bathtub. Sorry.
sure. Yes.
What's a bathtub?
You literally said, "What's the word? Bathtub? What's the word?" And I was like, "Bathtub." You just said it.
What is it? But what is a bathtub? Okay, sorry. No, but I feel like a lot of those names did come from there. Like the name Grayson is like
Gray's son.
Son of the gray-haired man, I think is what it means. And like I mean, obviously there's a lot, like Schiefer means slate, which is like we used to do roofing back in the day, you know. So that probably is what that means. That's cool.
Okay, so yeah, I hope I figured it out on my own. That'd be a fun thing my brain did today.
I love it.
So 12-year-old Gertrude Svensdotter was working with another shepherd. She was a shepherd. She was working with another shepherd. His name was Mats Nilsson. Maybe Neil's son. I don't know.
I think so.
And the two of them, while working together, they got in a fight about something. We don't know what. And she beats him up.
Yeah, she does.
So good for her.
Probably defending herself.
That's what I'm thinking.
I'm not promoting violence, folks. Okay, I'm just saying, you know, sometimes you guys stand up for yourself.
I don't know what happened, but I'm just gonna go off of the track record all of history's ever had and assume that she needed to defend herself. During this fight, the goats that they were tending to all ran off. So Gertrude goes to find them. So she gets in a fight and then regains composure, and goes back to work. This guy runs home after getting beaten up for something he may or may not have done. And while Gertrude is out looking for goats, he thinks, okay, well, this is my moment before Gertrude gets here and can say what happened. So he decides to make her look really bad.
Jackass.
And so he said that he had seen, I don't know if he made her look really bad, but he said that he'd seen her walk on water.
Yeah, but he's like, I'm going to make her look so stupid.
But he said that he saw her walk on water across the river. And then when she found all the goats and led them back, she also was able to give them the gift of walking across the water.
Which is like pretty dope. Like I'd be like, I'd pay for your services to teach my goats to walk on water, you know?
I would love someone to give me the gift of walking on water.
Absolutely.
That'd be so badass. So Matt's father, Neil, I'm calling him.
Neil.
He went to the local minister, whose name was Lars Elvius.
Okay.
Sounds like an evil person.
It does.
He goes to the local minister, and soon Gertrude is interrogated multiple times and under extreme duress until she finally confesses that she has met the devil because in her home parish, her neighbor's maid had her meet the devil.
Oh, come on.
The neighbor's maid, by the way, was named Merritt John's daughter. I guess she's John's daughter. And she's often called Store Merritt or Big Merritt in the story.
Okay.
But I guess Merritt took her to meet the devil. So
Oh boy.
In this trial, I guess trying to find some sort of mercy or protect herself however she could, Gertrude ends up accusing 19 women in total. And at just 12 years old, she is sentenced to death.
Jesus!
So, because she was 12 and a lot of people still had like some common sense to them, they were like, hang on a second, maybe we shouldn't be killing children.
Cool.
They were like, maybe we should be saving them from evil. And she's a kid, so we should drop her sentence down to flogging.
Oh,
so
God.
She still got flogged for really nothing. But those 19 people she accused weren't children. And to save themselves, they started accusing one another. And they started accusing other people and other people.
It was like survival tactic, you know?
Yeah, so it quickly grew into, I mean, if 19 people are naming 2 people each, that's another 40 people on top of these 19 people. And so that's already 60 people in town. So pretty much everyone's getting accused out of nowhere.
Everyone's daughter.
John's daughter, Sven's daughter. And so Merritt, as we mentioned, the neighbor's maid, she was tried twice, but ultimately was executed along with many other people. And basically, like I said, if you think about it in terms of numbers, within seconds, 100 people could be witches in this town if everyone's just like throwing
pointing a
there.
finger, yeah.
So total hysteria ensues. Sweden is already going through it because in the recent years they've had religious stuff going on, they've had war, they've had mass poverty, and all of Northern Europe had been dealing with the Little Ice Age, which was like extremely cold summers, so everyone's crops are hurting.
Oh no.
So people are eating less and food security isn't being promised. And people also thought that you could steal luck from people. It was just a superstition at the time was you could steal luck from your neighbor if you sold yourself to the devil, basically.
Whoa.
So if you sold yourself to the devil, then your neighbor's crops would do worse than yours.
Oh, great.
So everyone's crops were doing bad. Everyone's cows were getting sick. And if your neighbor's doing better based on this one superstition, they might be a witch.
It's because of them, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think we talked about that in Rituals, too, at some point. Maybe not the same area, but we have talked about witchcraft on Rituals. Go listen to Rituals. And they were really looking for any reason at that point. And
the first episode was about weather witches and about how people would base everything on the crops, which is understandable. I mean, that's their livelihood. But it got out of hand.
Yeah, if you're hungry and you can't like promise food for your family, and the neighbors next to you seem like they're doing pretty good, and you can't tell why or what the difference is.
It's probably you were nature.
Just looking for a reason to compare yourself, I guess.
Right.
And basically, people were ready to snap, just waiting for an excuse, and they found one in witchcraft. So the news about Gertrude spread to a bunch of villages nearby, and people start freaking the fuck out. The government was dealing with a lot at the time. Well, they always are, but they were dealing with like well beyond what they were probably comfortable with, and they couldn't even afford to deal with this at the moment. So they were letting the villages build extra committees of priests and judges to help the parishes root out witches.
I see. So they're like, you handle this on a more local level. Oh boy.
So in Norway's witch trials, which we're talking about Sweden right now, but in Norway's witch trials, many of the accused people were an indigenous group of people called the Sami. And they were in Norway, Finland, Sweden, and Russia. Okay. But the Sami people mostly lived in a farther northern region. And although they were targeted in northern Sweden, the most heinous trials were in southern Sweden. Okay. So in southern Sweden, that was where a bunch of Finnish people had just immigrated to the area, and they were being noticed for their cultural differences, which my dumb American brain doesn't often think that they would have much difference between their cultures, but apparently there's at least some practices that they do differently, including they would live in the forest, they would cut down trees and burn them to create rich harvest, which meant that their crops were doing better.
I see, because they were smarter about, or they had some
different practices.
Yes,
and
that were
they were
able
working
to help them out, right? Yes. Okay, so God forbid. Okay.
Exactly. So they were also they were nicknamed by the Swedes the forest Finnish, which I guess it became a slur for them at the time. So most of those accused of witchcraft in southern Sweden became Finnish became Finnish people that they were targeting just because they were known. They had now just like gotten their own timely slur. They were now being judged as like the forest people. Their crops were doing better, and everyone in Sweden was really struggling food wise. And so they just started accusing anyone who was either Finnish or affiliated with Finnish people. And the oldest woman at the time to be accused for witchcraft was also Finnish, and she was like in her 80s.
Oh boy.
And like, leave the woman alone.
God.
Leave her alone. And when accused in trial, apparently one of the differences between Finland and Sweden is that in Finland, you're allowed to bring weapons to court.
Cool.
At least at the time. But she didn't know that was illegal in Sweden. And so she tried to defend herself in court and brought a knife.
Oh, boy.
And so that really didn't help her case. Anyway, so that's just an example of one of the Finnish people who got called out for no reason. And also in Sweden, torture was technically illegal. I guess, it's technically always illegal, and yet people find a way to do it.
Yeah, interesting how that works.
But I guess their logic to it about why they should use torture during these witchcraft trials was because you couldn't get an execution approved without indisputable evidence, aka the only indisputable evidence they were going to get was a confession.
I mean, I can't even count the ways how backwards that is, but sure, go for it.
So, I know we're breezing past. Otherwise, we have already shown how quickly we can derail today. So,
yeah.
So they basically needed a confession. Otherwise, they couldn't do anything about all the witches. And the only way to get a confession was through torture. So if we wanted to handle the witchcraft thing, we needed to torture these people.
Sure.
The people quickly figured out that this was a way of... They basically figured out that to torture someone into a confession was the only way they were interested in figuring out if someone was a witch or not. There was like, even if you could prove it in some other way, there was nothing more as effective.
Yeah, they're like,
torturing.
This is the most effective, so we're going to keep doing this.
Yeah, when we torture people, we somehow end up with 100 witches.
Yeah, it's
versus...
the weirdest thing. It's like 100% effective 100% of the time. You never believe it.
Oh,
so horrible.
So they ignored the rules on torture in the name of finding out who the local witches were. And the higher courts, I already said they were really going through it right now.
Yeah.
And they quickly got overwhelmed at just the amount of cases that were coming through of witchcraft. So when local, like lower level courts needed their approval for an execution, it's so twisted. When they needed an approval for an execution, the higher courts didn't get to them in time because they were so busy with other shit going on that they wouldn't give them a timely answer on whether or not the execution was approved. So the lower courts would just bank on the fact that they'd probably say yes.
Oh, no.
And go through with the executions anyway on the technicality that they were never told no.
So it's like, better to ask forgiveness than permission. Yeah.
Yep.
Jesus Christ.
Like, well, they never said no. It's like, they never said yes. What are you talking about?
That is so backwards. I mean, I'm like not surprised, but it still sucks.
It gets worse because children now are getting involved too. So kids' testimonies were seen as too unreliable. But a lot of kids were the key witnesses because they could tell you stories about their teachers. They were on the inside, right? They could tell you about mommy and daddy at home and mommy.
No. Mm-hmm. And they've proven time and time again that children will say what they think you want to hear. That's how the whole fucking whatchamacallit sex scandal. What was that like? That horrible time when all those teachers got accused of like devil worship and all that, and it was all mishandled and bungled, and it was all a myth. But anyway, yeah, it's like been proven. The kids just say what they think you want to hear.
So that gets mentioned in this too later. So their testimonies were considered unreliable until how cool they were all of a sudden talking about all these witches, because they probably heard their parents talking about witches and the witchcraft trials going on. So now they've got things to say.
Yep.
Or if there was somebody who was accused and they needed to interrogate somebody on it and see, is this person really a witch? Who better to go to than their children, who they could torture very easily.
Disturbing.
So now, even though they were once considered unreliable, their testimonies are now supporting death sentences.
They were unreliable until they were useful to their cause. Yeah.
They were unreliable until they were the only ones these courts had to rely on, which should tell you something. Even worse, they were getting, or not really even worse, but they often got the accused woman's children to act as one of the sole witnesses. And these kids were as young as 4. So imagine being 4 and
Jesus Christ, that's terrible.
Essentially, you know, when you grow up and have a guilt complex, you will be telling yourself every day, you killed your mother. So
terrible.
But one child's testimony was not often enough. They were considered a fragment, I guess a fragment of a person, therefore a fragment of a testimony.
Cool.
So the courts now had permission to go interrogate / torture 30 to 40 children to accuse one person. And with 30 to 40 children, if you say, give me a name on who's a witch, they're going to pick anyone they know. So that's 30 to 40 new witnesses, or 30 to 40 new people on trial.
That's insane.
So most children their testimonies often led to something called the Blackula, which I like to think of as Michael Scott calling Daryl Blackula when he was dressed as Dracula.
Oh, jeez.
So I thought that was really the only reference when I first saw this. I was like, that's the only source I've ever heard on Blackula.
Well, that would be our only source, you know?
Yeah, I've never heard of any other thing, but apparently
we're not torturing children for our sources, so
that's true.
We just have The Office.
I would like to go back to a time before I knew about actual Blackula and just thought of Daryl, but okay, guess not.
I'm currently in that time, so maybe just skip this part so I can live there.
Yeah, you've only got about like 3 seconds left in this world, so... So most of the children's testimonies, again, because they were probably hearing about it nonstop at the dinner table or from other kids at school or something, but everyone seemed to have a story about Blackula all of a sudden, which was a hill or a mountain said to be in Sweden where the devil would host his Sabbath, his unholy Sabbath.
I see.
So it's not technically hell, it's his like staycation where he
good. It's like his Verbo where he goes to do his fucking seances and shit. Okay.
It's his lair of sorts. And so it's an upside down world where all the rules are backwards.
Cool.
So on the Sabbath, witches would ride farm animals backwards, or horses and brooms, or they would hop on the backs of men in their village and ride them like a horse, or they flew north where they enacted an unholy mirror to the Sabbath. I mean, they would
sure, you know,
they would sing backwards. They would pray the Lord's Prayer backwards. They would. My favorite one is that there was apparently a saying that a church bell would knock a witch off of her mount, and since that was apparently true, at Blackula on the Sabbath, the witches would chew apart brass church bells and spit the pieces into a lake.
Ew. That's such a weirdly like the first person to come up with that, like, brava, because what a beautiful picture you've painted.
Like, I'm so sorry you were used as like a witness for a witch trial when you could have been an author, and it would have been
I feel like in a different age you would have really shined, you know.
During the Stephanie Meyer phase, you would have really your Wattpad would have been crazy. I bet.
No.
So but no, that was one of the rumors that had been told around the village, that they would chew church bells and spit pieces into the lake. Which, by the way, if you needed proof where you wouldn't have to torture people, why didn't anyone go looking in the lake for pieces of the church bell?
They probably did and didn't find any, and we're like, well, we don't. They
disappeared or something. Yeah, it's like, oh, they fade away after the Sabbath. Something bullshit.
You know.
So the witches would also apparently abduct innocent children to make them go to these Sabbaths with them. Which, like, by the way, if the whole scary thing about a witch is that they're like this independent, strong woman, I don't know if they're bringing children to their parties, like, for fun. You know?
I feel like, you know, speaking as someone with a lot of friends who are, you know, child-free by choice. I don't think they want to just invite along a bunch of kids. I feel like that makes like the debauchery a little less fun, you know?
As someone, and again, there are wonderful places where wonderful children can be gathered, but as someone who is child free by choice, my idea of a party with the devil does not include bringing random children and then being in charge of them.
Who has a child, my idea of a party with the devil also doesn't include children. So like, let's just put that out there. It doesn't matter whether I have kids or not. I think it's pretty obvious.
Good point. All I'm saying is I can't imagine someone goes, you know what would make this night fucking crazy if we bring...
I mean, I guess maybe they have a point. I'm kind of coming around to their point. Like, as someone with a toddler now, I'm like, oh boy, she can rain some hell down, you know, if she really wanted to.
Maybe if you were having like baby Olympics or something, and like
there's something to be said.
Who can bring the cutest little baby? Or
there is something to be said for their destructive tendencies, you know. So I could see that being helpful, but
I feel like if you really wanted to go against the devil, you would bring him to a party with a bunch of babies and like give him his own version of hell. Like have
that's true.
The babies like bring crayons and draw all over his fiery walls.
That's
and,
a great
like,
point.
Spit up everywhere and just scream and cry, and he can't get away from it. Like
and don't worship him, and and pet the goat instead of slaughter it or whatever.
Like bring babies to hug all the animals.
Yeah.
See, that would be a great way to go against the devil. I think.
Get it. I get it now.
Whatever. But apparently they would kidnap these children who were like on board with Satan, I guess. And these abducted kids would apparently be like, you know, would insert creative or non-creative thing here, beaten or like married off to demons or something. But these were all stories that allegedly the children were telling mid-torture, let's be clear. So they would get lured away with like treats and gifts. And I do understand like the storyline of like the witches were bringing them while they're young and impressionable to the devil to be turned into evil people, I guess. But so these were just stories that all the kids were bringing in their trial or in their interrogations about what the witches would do with them. They were forced to listen to people screaming in hell and, you know, insert whatever you want there. When they finally got home, apparently the presents they were given to be lured away would turn into dirt and snakes.
Okay.
That was another story.
Cool.
And basically there's just like Blackula accusations popping up in the trials early on, which by the way, if Blackula was a concept during Satanic Panic, you know, there'd be stories and movies written about like a group of 5 to 6 teenagers all trying to break into Blackula to have a big party.
Trying to prove themselves. Yeah.
So if anyone needs a like script to write,
I love it.
Have a good time. Like a bunch of teenagers from the 80s time travel to Blackula era and like
I like it. It's like Midsummer, but
accidentally save all the people from witch trials. That would be the great ending.
Because it's like Midsummer, but like with a happy ending. Sort of.
Yeah,
sort of.
Except unfortunately, this story like actually happened and is true, and it's
exactly. It's too bad.
So anyway, as the story truly goes, all the kids were saying horrible things. They go to Blackula. They're meeting all these witches. They're being, you know, consumed with evil, or that's what the witches are trying to do to them. But luckily, they got saved in time to be able to talk about it at their trial.
Right.
So at these trials, there were 2 types of witchcraft or 2 types of magic that people were put on trial for. So there was maleficia. Okay. Maleficia. Okay. I keep wanting to say Maleficent, which would make sense where her name comes from now, I guess. Or there was diabolism. Diabolism. Thank you. Those were the 2 types of magic that people could be on trial for. And the first one, which I keep calling Maleficent, it was based on one person who was usually like the trope of like the old cranky woman who's a burden on society. She doesn't like a man, or, you know, whatever it is. And she's charged with witchcraft often because like someone had an issue with her for land or a money dispute, or they just didn't like her face. And then like the problem's over. Like it was just like a one-time deal.
Sure.
But diabolism trials was when someone was accused. The accused were sworn to like Satan's service, and they're here to harbor evil on the town. And it's it's very like the Salem witch trials, where like it was a group of people who were all in charge of like being in cahoots with Satan.
Oh boy.
So Blackula or the Sabbath were considered diabolic. Oh my god, diabolic.
Diabolic.
I'm literally so stupid. But because if there's a Sabbath, that means there's more than one witch, so you can't just try the one person without getting names of the other people. So
sure.
it very quickly became a mess of the accused accusing others.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, like present day in the story, all magic was evil. Even the previously acceptable like healing acts that people were doing early on in like the 1300s, and
it's all out.
It's all out. Everything's bad. And the crescendo of, the Great Noise movement came out in Torsåker, which is in south central Sweden. And that was on October 15th, 1674. 100 people, mostly women, were accused and a trial began for witchcraft.
Jesus. Okay.
One woman managed to escape, and so did her son, because he was like a sailor and had already shipped out before the trial began. So he was somehow got away, and so did she. A lot of children were called to testify, and witch hunters did pretty much whatever they had to get testimonies out of those kids. So you can use your imagination on that. One of the stories is that they would hold the children under ice water and like cut holes in ice lakes and put them under there until
Holy shit.
That's just one of, I'm sure, 100 versions of whatever happened. Which I don't know how in today's world, or even then, I don't know how witch hunters shouldn't already like be accepting that they would be on trial next for abusing children.
Right.
But I guess
you'd think that
maybe they were just seen as like saving the village by like doing whatever it took to
or
get
maybe
the
people
witches
were
out.
too scared because they're like, well, I don't want to be next.
Whatever happens to like the kids when they're growing up in the village and like have to like they go to a bar or a tavern and then they see the guy that used to drown them as a child?
They're
like how do you
just traumatized? And
I can't even imagine.
No. Horrible.
So anyway, other kids, just as you mentioned earlier, there were some kids who were tortured to tell their stories, but there were other kids who so badly wanted attention and praise at a time where children were to be seen, not heard, and on top of it, they were fighting for God if they were telling the stories of witchcraft.
The right thing.
So they wanted to be seen as little town heroes, and because
sad.
The more they talked, the more people were finally interested in what they had to say. They were just coming up with the craziest stories, probably Blackula, probably the church bell thing, just to, have 5 seconds of attention. And ultimately, again, this is like not the children's fault. They were under extreme duress. But due to a lot of the children's testimonies and then other, townspeople's stories too. It wasn't just the children. But due to all of these testimonies, 65 of these people were women out of the 100, I think. And they all died, which means 1 in every 5 women in Torsåker were executed in a single day.
In a day. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. That's 20%.
In some families, 3 generations of women in one family were killed that day.
What the fuck? I'm surprised there were so many men, though.
Yeah, me too. But maybe they just ran out of fucking women,
Seriously.
Maybe they were like, they had like a roster of everyone that lit like a census, and they're like, every woman's been accused. I guess we've got men we got to call out now too, or else.
Such a frenzy. It's horrible.
Like, how would you not even think, like, if every woman has been accused, maybe none of them are in on this?
Yeah. I
or
wonder,
like, if we kill all the women, what are we men to do now in town?
Yeah,
like,
I don't think they thought that through. They
like,
must
what happens,
not have.
What would have happened when you killed all of them and then it's just men? Like, now what? Now fucking what?
Good luck.
Like, okay. Anyway, 65 in a single day. It was the largest civilian execution in Sweden's history.
Jesus.
It's so bizarre. And so that was 65 women. And just so you know, out of the 100, it was 71 victims that day. So that's still 30% of them somehow got out of being executed. I'm sure they were terribly punished in other ways.
Oh, so not all 100 were executed?
71.
71. And
So
65 of those were women?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So
okay, that
6
makes
men.
more sense.
That does make more sense.
Like ratio-wise, I mean.
I wonder if it was 65 women and 35 men, and out of the 35
That's what
men,
I'm
only
saying.
6.
That's what it sounds like.
That does make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So it was on a mountain in the parish where all 71 victims, oh man, were beheaded. And then their bodies were burned at the stake, and their family and friends watched.
Dear Lord.
I can't imagine.
So barbaric.
I can't imagine in any time, not even in this time, but including this, any time where there was execution by beheading, or execution at all, but beheading for me is like a particularly gruesome, brutal, barbaric, like you said, kind of act. I can't imagine knowing like you're next, and you like if you're not
in
the
line, yeah,
you just watch it happen. Like, what if you're the 71st and you just had to watch 70 beheadings,
and you're the last one? I mean, think about this is just a dark thought, but like think about how many times they've used that blade on like so many different people, and also I don't know. I think for me, you didn't ask me this, but for me, my most like disturbing form of execution has always been burned on the stake. Like, I just think that's the most. It's got to be just the most painful way, you know.
Honestly, I wonder if they thought it was like
quicker way to.
Well, I was going to say by beheading them first, they didn't have to experience the burning. Like maybe they thought they were like giving them mercy or something.
Because they still burned all the I bet it was just like we have so many to kill that like you can't just burn all of them at the stake at once. Like
I guess so.
You'd have to kill them first.
I mean, at least with beheading, like they didn't have to experience being in a fire until they died.
Horrible.
But still, I mean, it's
just horrible.
And 71, like, how did they even find an executioner who was willing to do that unless you found a really fucking sick person?
You
like
had
maybe
to.
It was you had to find someone who really hated witchcraft, I guess,
or a group of people.
But also, like, family and friends watched. That means everyone who basically accused them, you know, because it was so. The hysteria was crazy. There was at least a kid there who watched their mom or sister die because they said something. And like, not that it's their fault, but like, I can't imagine them growing up and having to reflect on
feeling good about that, right?
Their contribution, even if it was completely by force. But like, I also think
it's got to do a number on you.
In the context of history, they probably, you know, weren't unpacking their childhood trauma the way we all are today.
You don't think so?
And they certainly
TikTok
didn't
teach them how to do that.
Well, they certainly didn't have like any gentle parenting to help them along the way. So like
these grown-ups were literally dunking them in ice water. So like, I think whatever the opposite of gentle parenting is, that's what was going on.
I just like can't imagine, like, even if you try to reflect on it one day, there's no one to talk about it with you. Like there's like no one ever was healed from this. And so this day finally was just so gruesome that it ended up sparking skepticism through Sweden, and officials had to step in, which I would like to say the officials should have fucking stepped in a long time ago.
Too little, too fucking late, my friends.
And after this, because it was just so terrible, child witnesses were banned, and people were no longer allowed to persecute people out of superstition.
Great.
I know, 71 people
Again,
too late.
Too little, too fucking late.
Priests could no longer condemn people. They were expected to help people find.
Oh, you don't say.
Help, not kill. They were expected to help them find their way back to God through prayer, not torture.
Oy vey.
And in 1676, so by the way, like that was the big day. That was the holy crap day. But there were still a few killings after that too. So
sure.
In 1676, the last execution during the Great Noise took place in Stockholm. So that was 2 years later, a year and a half later, that there were still killings from that one big horrible day. Over a year after that, people were still being killed by witchcraft. They were probably just, honestly, if you're that type of person who like wants to execute people out of witchcraft, they were probably just trying to churn them out before they knew the government would come in.
Let's get it over with before they intervene. Yeah,
exactly. So in 1704, which is another whole like 20, 30 years later, the last witch execution in Sweden happened. So
1704, you said?
1704. And then the big 71 people day was 74, and now it's 1704. So that's literally 40 years, 30 years later. 30 years later. And only then was the last execution for witchcraft in Sweden.
Dang.
And then in 1779, 75 years after that, the death penalty for witchcraft was overturned. So I guess just kind of laid dormant for 75 years, but it still technically existed.
Yeah.
And now the mountain where the execution took place is now still called Witch Mountain.
And that's not Blackula. Blackula was like a fake thing.
Blackula was a story created. I wonder if they still did the executions where they thought Blackula was.
That's what I was wondering. Like, are they trying to be like, look what we can do to override Satan? I don't know.
Right. But then also, like, couldn't just one person go up there and take one look around and go, yep, no devil. I guess we don't have to kill them.
Maybe he's hiding.
But so I don't know where the Blackula mountain is said to be, but that it was all just a story anyway.
Okay.
But the mountain where they actually executed people, which could have very well also been the Blackula mountain, was still there, and it's called Witch Mountain. It's also called Bonfire Mountain, which yikes. There's also a museum nearby to learn about the tragic events. And in 1975, which was on almost the 300th anniversary, Sweden erected a stone monument there. And one of the stones says, "Women died, men judged. The faith of the time affects the human."
Wow. Whoa. I just got goose cam. That's
so
powerful.
That's the Torsåker witch trials.
I gotta say, like I just did the Stockholm Syndrome episode, and it just makes me think, because Sweden nowadays is known as so peaceful, so progressive, and like it is. And, you look back and you're like, wow, that's horrifying. But then you think about like the stuff that happens here every day and in other countries every day. And it's like, man, I don't know. I'm proud. I guess I'm proud of Sweden for coming so far and now being such a progressive, safe place.
Yeah. I well done. Snaps to Sweden.
Good job, Sweden. Not back then. You really fucked up. You really fucked up. But
that was not cute.
Guess
that
what?
Was not
Everyone
cute.
apparently was fucking up back then, because I feel like you were far from the only witch trial happening,
Yeah, we really don't get to talk with our witch trials. No one really gets to talk.
More people than that for way more fucked up reasons, or equally fucked up reasons.
But still, that was a wild time.
Horrible.
Anyway,
what was that? The Great Noise? Is that what it's called?
The Great Noise.
That is such a spooky. It feels like I'm going to get sucked into a black hole or something.
Yeah, especially like it's so powerful but so vague, because like the noise could be anything. The noise could be the chatter of gossip. It could be the screams of the witches. It could be all the trial talk. It could be anything.
Ooh, I don't like it. The Great Noise.
Yeah.
Anyway,
there you have it.
My friend Alyssa and I, when we were little, we would, if we were on the phone, like on the landline, and we had to pee, or if we were like peeing on the phone, we'd be like, "Joyful noise," and then we'd flush the toilet. So if you said joyful noise, it was like, hold on, I have to flush the toilet.
Oh, that's precious. I just flush as I'm on the phone with you and wonder if you hear it or not.
I don't, but I think back then we didn't have a mute button, or I don't know. I don't know why. We just were like, anyway, I'm peeing. But hold on, I can't hear you for a second. Let me joyful noise.
Make a joyful noise so no one else has to hear it.
No, it was more like, here comes a joy. I forget why that even happened. It was just like, I literally don't know. I couldn't begin to tell you, but joyful noise. And then my brother worked for a record label called Joyful Noise, and I was like, Alexander, that's the sound of a toilet. I cannot get it out of my head. I
can start doing joyful noise with you next time I'm on the phone.
We should try it.
Next time I do one of my
famous potty calls. You're the only one I talk to on the phone anymore. So.
Oh, you're the only one I call on the potty. So is what I was saying. And I've never even. I hope it's an honor. I've never even thought to like press mute when I flush. I've
literally never noticed. So
I literally FaceTime you and tell you I'm on the toilet. I need to talk to you.
Phases me zero. Again, I've been doing this since I was 5, apparently. Joyful noise. So
joyful noise. Well, all right. We'll give it a shot next time, as long as I'm not stealing you.
You know
and
what's
Melissa's
so
thing.
Embarrassing? Once we did a simultaneous joyful noise, we're like, oh, me too. Just like always peeing on the phone.
That's not embarrassing. That's so in sync. That's harmony.
Oh, anyway, good times. And when my therapist asked why I'm afraid of the phone, I'm like, I can't imagine why. There were only wonderful things happening.
Oh.
Okay, let's get to something fucked up, shall we?
Yeah, let's continue the fucked up train.
Yeah, right. Let's stop pretending like we're gonna break from it.
I just noticed I'm literally holding my chapstick like a fucking cigarette. Like I'm just
Freud?
I'm just like tell me a story. Tell me what's gonna happen next.
Let me just get a little I'm not cool enough to know smoking lingo. I'm like, let me get a drag. There it is.
Yeah.
I was about to say a whiff, and I'm like,
you want a hit or something?
You want a hit of that? This is me pretending to be undercover, like with the cool kids.
Next time I'm with you and I have chapstick, I'm gonna make you want to drag. Like,
I'm like, can I get a hit of that?
Yeah. It feels very nice, though.
I'm actually very jealous. My lips are very dry. Anyway, let's get to this. This is the story of. It's a murder story. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, I was going to say, kill what?
You don't say. This is the murder of Connie Debate. And it's spelled Dabate. And my initial instinct was to say Dabate, like Dabate. But her friends pronounce it Debate. And I listened to like a Dateline podcast about it. And one of the friends mentioned, this is just such a random fun fact, but one of the friends mentioned they called their the Debate family's house, they called it the Dabate Estate.
Shut the fuck up. That's the coolest thing I've ever heard.
Which is so funny because you could literally say the Debate Estate, but they were like, we're going to change the pronunciation to the Dabate Estate.
That now they would be my fucking friends because that's just how like
I know.
That's like when I'm telling Allison, like, I'm at the apartment. She's like, where are you? And I'm like, I'm at the manor.
I'm at the manor. Yeah.
I would give anything to be able to call it the Dabate Estate.
Exactly.
Oh my God. That's like my noshgalash.
It's your noshgalash. It's your troll hole. It's like just the best of all worlds.
By the way, eventually, maybe we do that for the after chat. I'll show you my noshgalash because she's currently stocked to the
She's
brim.
Arrived? See, I never even saw her yet.
She's been here. Yeah. And she's
made herself at home.
She's well loved. Okay. Don't you worry.
I'm going to see the noshgalash in the after chat.
If you would like to join Patreon and check out the noshgalash, you're more than welcome.
I just feel everyone going, no thanks.
And also anyone who missed that episode, the noshgalash is literally a galash full of snacks that I can nosh on.
It speaks for itself. I feel like people should figure that out. And if you want to join and learn more about birds of Kentucky, you can also join the after chat. Just kidding. I would not do that to you or Em.
You will though.
I will though. So this is a murder of Connie Debate of the famous Dabate Estate.
I'm sorry. I know it's about to be so tragic. Just let me have this one thing.
That's why I'm trying to force some like good fun in the beginning before it gets horrifically dark.
Thank you.
So let's get to it. Connie was born in Connecticut in 1976 with 3 siblings. She graduated high school in 95, college in 99. This just gives you an idea of like where she was in the timeline, and went on to work in pharmaceutical sales. In June of 2003, at the age of 27, she married the man she had fallen in love with, Richard Debate. Their birthdays were only 3 days apart, which is adorable. That's something people, I don't know.
They get to have a birthday week.
They get a birthday week like we do.
I know.
Imagine.
Trust me, it's fun. It's very fun,
guys. You should try it. Actually, speaking of Alyssa, her birthday and my birthday are 3 days apart.
Really? So ours are 4 days apart?
So she is the 1st. So you're 2 days apart.
Oh,
I know. Now we just need a June 2nd to fill in the blank.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. So Connie's friend said they looked like a really solid couple, like a really together couple that had made it work. And when they interviewed the friends on the Dateline episode on the podcast, they mentioned, at a party, he was always doting after her. He would say, like, let me make you a plate, and basically put all the other husbands in the neighborhood to shame. That was like how much he doted on and cared for his wife. People did note that they were an opposites attract type of couple with a lot of differences that seemed to make them stronger. Friends considered Connie the more responsible one of the couple. She was an active volunteer. She was like a class mom, helped with the PTA, did other activities or events that friends and families needed her to volunteer her help with.
Lit up a room.
Trust me, I'm getting there. I even put in here, actually lit up a room. She was once even the vice president of the Ellington Volunteer Ambulance Corps. Like, she's just like stepping in wherever. And she doesn't work in medicine. Well, she works in pharmaceuticals, but not like
how
as an
obscure.
EMC. I know.
Obscure.
I know.
Yeah.
I love it. So people described her as, here we go, having an effervescent personality. And a local pastor said people were naturally drawn to her. But in, listening to her friends talk about her, it's very true. She had a lot of people who said like, oh, she's my best friend. Like she was just such a good friend to people, just so involved and so responsible and just really well liked and like legitimately lit up a room, as cliche as that is. Meanwhile, as for Richard, people saw him as more of a clever, quote, overgrown kid. According to friends, he would...
Wait, Allison, write that down.
I knew you were going to say that. He made, like, get ready for this, maybe take notes. He made corny jokes and puns. Nosh galosh, anyone?
The Dabate Estate? Now I get it.
True. Now it makes sense. But he was really quick on his feet, and he could come up with a joke for every situation. That does really sound familiar, I'm not going to lie.
Thank you.
One friend said he was definitely an odd character. I would say Rick is Rick. He was kind of quirky. He did, however, have some credit issues, but that aside, he and Connie seemed pretty financially secure, and they seemed to work through things pretty much like adults as a couple. And like I said, Connie worked as a pharmaceutical sales rep, and Richard, meanwhile, was working as a computer network administrator. The two of them had 2 sons together, and they lived in just the most like suburban, idyllic neighborhood called Ellington, Connecticut.
Wow, it does sound like a movie.
Right? Okay, well, buckle up because this movie's about to get rated R.
Okay.
So sadly for Connie, more than a decade into their marriage, Richard began having an affair.
Shit.
I hope this is where you and Rick differ, part ways. Let's hope.
So far. Certainly so far.
Certainly. Yeah. Only one of Richard's friends knew about it after Richard confided in him. And Connie probably, looking back, didn't know that Richard was cheating. But that being said, she was also far more unhappy in their marriage than she let on. Like other people didn't realize, even her closest friends didn't realize how unhappy she was in her marriage.
Oh, wow.
And we know this now because in her notes app on her phone, there was a memo titled, "Why I Want a Divorce."
Girl, you got to make it say milk or something, like look like a grocery list,
Shopping list, right?
Yeah.
PTA volunteer information.
By the way, if you ever go through my phone, don't look up milk in my notepad.
Yeah, I was going to say, you got to change that, bud.
I've got to change it now to like popcorn or some other grocery list item.
You stop listing them because you're going to run out of ideas.
Well, I have, obviously we all have like secret notes in our memo pad, or most of us do. I don't know if you do.
I mean, I do. I
certainly do.
Imagine everyone listening is like, no, we don't. And it's just you and
There's
me.
one person out there who would validate us, I think. But no, like I have like ones that's like certain like birthday gift lists and like things I want to mention in therapy. And like obviously there are things that like if you ever want to find out my deepest darkest secrets, it's probably on a notepad somewhere. And like
same.
You don't just title it like the most like obvious thing possible.
Well, she did, okay, and it was called "Why I Want a Divorce," and it was basically a pros and cons list for decision making about this, but it was only cons. It was like a cons and cons list,
right?
Like no pros,
right? Just bad,
just bad things,
all negative things. Got it.
So it was last updated in December of 2014, and she wrote that Richard took money from bank accounts that weren't his. So that is a big one, I would say, for wanting a divorce.
Yeah, that one makes a lot of sense. Okay.
That's a big one. She also said he was an unfit parent, acts uncaring toward her, doesn't come home on time, and acts like a kid constantly. Apparently, according to this note, he also took out a credit card in her name. And she didn't know it. We don't know if she knew this at the time, but the suspicion is she did not know that he used it to spend over $1,000 on flowers and dates with his girlfriend that he was cheating on her with.
Richard.
With a card in her name. Like, how twisted.
Yeah, that's someone made an impulsive choice and did not think that through.
Yeah. Or did
one.
and did it anyway, which is equally as fucked up.
Oh, yeah. Didn't even care.
Yeah, didn't care. Whether Connie suspected like why he was spending this way was unclear, but she was mad about the overspending itself because again, she's like the responsible one. She's trying to keep the family afloat and together and happy, and he's just like fucking around and making and lying and stealing money from her. It's just like it's messy. And nobody outside of the family knew this, right? So, I mean, thankfully she did title this note because the investigators were able to find it later and be like, aha, she literally wrote a list of all the things that were wrong.
That actually does work out really well in her favor. Yeah.
Yeah. So it seemed like Connie was trying to talk herself into like making this decision, but she never got the chance because 3 days before Christmas 2015, police received a signal from a home security system at the Dabate Estate at 10:16 a.m. 2 minutes later at 10:18, Richard tried to call 911, but he misdialed. At 10:19, he got through, and when he spoke to them, he sounded confused and he was moaning in pain. So police arrived at 10:30. They saw blood on the top of the basement stairs trailing toward the kitchen, and that's where they found Richard. Richard was lying face down on the kitchen floor, and he was bound to a brown aluminum folding chair by zip ties. Yikes. The chair was on top of him. One hand was bound, both ankles were bound, and there was a zip tie around his neck securing him to the chair. Yikes. Richard was moaning in pain. He told officers there was still someone in the house, so police called for backup. And one responding officer even thought Richard was dead because that's how still he was laying in the kitchen.
Oh, my God.
And when they asked him what happened, he said there was a break-in. And they said, can you describe this person? He said a tall man in camouflage and a mask had broken in and attacked them. He said he watched the intruder shoot Connie in the basement.
Oh, my God.
So officers found Connie, indeed, in the basement, dead of 2 gunshot wounds, one to the stomach and one to the back of her head.
Oh, my God.
It's so fucked up. Beside Connie was a box cutter, a hammer, a butane torch, and some burnt papers. There was also a Ruger 357 Magnum handgun nearby. So when EMS arrived to help Richard, they unbound him and found small, superficial cuts on his chest and thighs. A canine unit arrived on scene and began tracking, and the dog's job was to follow scents not just at the scene, but specifically scents that led away from the scene to try and track where a fleeing suspect might have gone, if that makes sense. So instead of following a scent leading away from the crime scene, the dog followed the scent out of the basement and then back inside the house. Weird. The officer led the dog away and said, okay, let's try one more time. They initiated a new track to identify a foreign scent at the scene. This time, the dog tried to climb into the ambulance where Richard had been moved to. Interesting. So the officer removed the dog from the area and tried a third time, this time in a different spot, trying to find any hidden track. The dog failed to find a single scent leading away from the scene. It just followed Richard's scent the whole time. A second and third canine unit responded, and likewise, every single dog failed to find a trace of anyone fleeing the scene.
And he also only had one hand zip tied.
Interesting. Okay. Good eye or good ear.
Good ear. Good brain, ear. Really.
I wouldn't go that far.
Okay. Well, that little chunk that was used was pretty good today.
Good nerve ending or whatever. Figured that out.
Good one cell that made it all the way.
Richard described the intruder as 6 feet tall, at least, stocky with a deep voice. He actually described him as sounding like, who's the Fast and Furious guy?
Vin Diesel?
Vin Diesel. Like, literally, they played in the Deadline episode, they played the interview, and you can hear him saying, he had a Vin Diesel-like voice. Just like,
okay.
He said he couldn't name the skin tone of the person, but he could identify that he sounded like Vin Diesel.
Which, like, I could argue that someone in crisis, you never know what part you're going to focus on.
That's fair.
So, sure, maybe that was almost, like, so weird that it would have made sense, but okay.
Yep, exactly. That's a good point. Your one neuron that's sparking, like, picked up on the Vin Diesel thing. It's like, I've seen Fast and Furious.
Well, I feel like if, like, a guy that looked like Brad Pitt, like, was broke into my house, I'd be like, that fucking guy looked like Brad Pitt. That's crazy. Like, you know?
They're like, how tall is he? I don't fucking know. How tall is Brad Pitt? Yeah.
How dreamy were his eyes? I don't know. Think about Brad Pitt.
I got lost in them. I can't tell you. Yeah. So that's kind of how he described him, which was, like, odd, but, you know, like you said, I'm sure odder things have happened when people are in shock. So essentially, he said this guy who sounded like, what did we say? Vin Diesel? Why can't I remember his name? I keep wanting to say Van Halen or...
You can also just call him Groot because they were the same person. So.
Okay, he sounded like Groot. Although didn't Groot just say Groot?
Yeah. He actually looked like a tree when he was in the house. It was crazy.
Oh, wait, it was actually a tree I looked at.
Yeah, the dogs tried smelling for him. They just peed on it instead.
They peed on it. Okay, so he described him as having a Vin Diesel voice, dressed in all camouflage with gloves and a mask on. And so, of course, they're thinking, well, it's broad daylight in a residential neighborhood. Somebody must have seen him. So they start canvassing the area. They set up perimeters. This is the investigators, I mean, to question passersby. But nobody in the neighborhood notes seeing anything strange. And I want to point out here that, again, I keep referencing this episode of Dateline, but it was really fascinating to hear from her friends and the neighbors, because one neighbor said her kids were on the couch watching the iPad, and all of a sudden police just like swarmed the neighbors, her best friend's house down the street or across the street, and then came to her door and said, we're searching the area. There is an intruder and like potential killer on the loose in the neighborhood, and you need to take your kids and get in the powder room and shut the door while we search your house to clear it. Like, it's terrifying. And so, she's probably, I don't want to speak for her, but I would have been absolutely traumatized by like a police officer just showing up and being like, get in the bathroom. There's a killer on the loose and he might be in your house. Like, so she said, I hid the kids behind the toilet, and and he said, only open the bathroom door if I knock twice. Like, that's the signal that we've cleared the house. But at the time they really thought like there's a killer, a maniac on the loose.
Yeah.
And so they're searching all these people's houses. And again, this is a very quiet, like idyllic neighborhood. So of course the last place anyone expects this kind of thing. But nobody sees the guy. None of the neighbors have seen the guy. And Richard is at the hospital. He's pretty quickly cleared of any injuries, and he is brought in for questioning, obviously. Mm-hmm. Richard tells investigators, this is his timeline. Okay, so at 8:10 a.m., he dropped his two sons, who are 6 and 9, off at their bus stop. Then he went home, said goodbye to Connie, who was getting ready to go to her spin class at YMCA. He watched her back out of the driveway, and then he left right after her. Halfway to work, however, he realized he forgot his laptop, so he turned around. On the way back home, his phone pinged and sent him a notification that the house alarm system had been tripped and was going off. So he said he assumed he'd set it wrong, so he went inside to fix it, and nothing seemed out of place, so he went upstairs to double-check the house, and he said this is when he spots this intruder in a closet going through his stuff. And he says the intruder manhandled him, pulled a knife on him, threatened him, and demanded his bank information, passwords, PIN numbers, etc. Then this intruder said, I'm going to sit here patiently and wait for your family to get home. Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, shit.
So tragically, Connie came home, likely having gotten the alarm notification, or maybe her spin class had been canceled. Either way, she enters the house and Richard yells at her to run. The intruder makes his way to the stairs and Richard runs after him. He first tells the police he fell down the stairs, then he tells the police he was pushed down the stairs by the intruder. Either way, he fell down the stairs while he hears Connie heading for the basement. And why would she go to the basement, you think? Well, he said they kept his gun down there. And he said she was probably going to get the gun when she hears there's an intruder in the house. So Richard chases after the intruder, who's chasing after Connie, into the basement. And then he hears, as he's approaching, he hears a gunshot ring out that is so loud, he said he couldn't hear anything else for 5 minutes. Notably, though, let's take a pause, because I want to tell you that Richard's story tended to change several times when he retold it. In one version, he said he saw Connie get shot. Very outright saw it happen. When questioned again, he described the scene very differently. Then on a third explanation, he said, oh no, Connie actually was fighting with the intruder, and then he shot her. And then in a fourth explanation, he said it was too dark to see anything at all. So he just heard the gunshot, didn't see it.
Okay.
So already really fishy. In the basement, remember they found those burnt papers next to like a butane torch? Mm-hmm. So the intruder, for some reason, was burning papers near Connie's body with a butane torch. Then he allegedly forced Richard back upstairs, where he subdued him, bound him to a chair, and then tormented him, using the torch to singe him and randomly poking his chest and thighs with the box cutter. Although Richard described it as him saying he wasn't overly aggressive with the box cutter. Just gentle stabbing.
He was just tickling you with the box cutter.
Just a little tickle. It was just a little fun game, you know?
Meanwhile, I would think if someone has the adrenaline of having just murdered somebody.
Shooting someone?
Just shooting somebody. And now you've got a whole witness. Mm-hmm. That person's so dead.
Yeah,
so
he's
dead.
going to just do a little paper cut? I don't think so. That's exactly what they were thinking.
Yeah.
And when they said, well, what did he sound like, aside from this Vin Diesel thing, he said, I couldn't hear anything he said because my ears were still ringing from the gunshot. Okay.
Okay, but you were able to know what he sounded like before.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. I
think this was just his way of saying, oh, I couldn't understand what he was saying, or like, you know, why he was doing this. I couldn't understand what he was saying. But when the attacker left, Richard somehow made his way to the alarm panel panic button to signal police for help. He said he, get this, screamed for help, and then a gentleman came in the house, saw the scene, and called 911, and then left and never identified himself. A gentleman. Cool.
A gentleman. Although, to be fair, if I heard someone screaming and I walked in on that scene, I would also not want to stick around, but I would call the police for them.
You have to stick around.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Well, I mean, if you've witnessed something, like you need to describe what you saw.
That's true. I've called the police before and then asked them, do I have to stay or can I leave?
Oh, I'm assuming in this case they'd be like, please wait there, because a couple of times
right.
I've called 911 for, like, I saw an elderly woman get hit by a car and she flew like 15 feet. It was horrifying. And she survived, thankfully, but it was just one of those moments of like slow motion, just horror. And so of course I called 911 and they were like, please stay there so we can, you know, ask you what you saw and write down, you know, the details and make sure she's okay, you know. And I think, especially if you're calling for a medical emergency, they instruct you like how to do CPR.
Oh, really? Because I've called for a medical emergency before.
But on yourself, or what?
No, like I was driving. I straight up saw a person. I'm only starting to giggle out of nervousness, but I saw a guy literally without his arm. Like it was recently gone. And he was just walking around just like
okay, I don't think they would expect you to get yourself involved in that.
And I called and I was like, I don't know how to say this, but this man clearly just lost his arm and is walking around like he might be on adrenaline and not even know what's going on. He might be on drugs and not know what's going on. And they were like, what did he look like? And I was like, it might have been a white shirt, but it's fully red now. So red shirt, I guess. And then I was literally in my car when I saw this happening, like across like the highway. And I was like, I have no way of getting to him.
No. I mean, I think that's different. I think if you were to walk into a house and be like, I see a guy laying on the ground, he's begging for help. Like, they'd be like, okay, ask him what happened or something. I mean,
I'd still at least hide somewhere until the cops got there and then re-show myself and be like,
understandable. Like, you don't know if the perpetrator's still there or, you know, if you're in danger. But it's also like, why would you walk into someone else's house and
no, that makes sense for
call
sure.
911? Like, it's just very weird. And then disappeared and never said anything. Like, wouldn't you be like, hey, what happened here? I'm calling 911.
It seems like a very important anonymous tip. Yeah.
Yes. It's just like so bizarre, especially in a neighborhood where everyone knows each other. Like, you know, it's not a random apartment complex where you don't know. It just struck them as odd. So the community, of course, is shocked. It's so violent, so brutal, so terrifying. This neighborhood's known to be safe, very calm. Richard and of course, the person, Connie, who was killed, was just a quote light, like a favorite of everybody's, like just such
everyone knew her. So
everyone knew her.
So if it were a random neighbor walking by,
they'd know whose house that was.
Yeah,
exactly. So Richard made a public statement on Facebook for his friends and family after the incident, and I'm going to read some of it to you.
Okay.
This is a screenshot of Richard's post. As most of you know by now, Connie, and by the way, tagged Connie's profile which I find kind of weird. Maybe that's not weird. I don't know. But it's
I
like
don't
a
know.
link to her profile. Maybe it's not weird. As most of you know by now, Connie has been taken from us far too early. The volume of loving friends, family, and acquaintances who we saw at services is a testament at how much she touched the lives of others. Many questions unanswered, but we are all doing our best to move forward, as impossible as it seems. We try to stay strong for the boys. RJ and Connor need me now more than ever. Both my family and Connie's have been so incredibly helpful and loving to those boys. Our friends and neighbors have also been showing an amazing amount of support. To all of you, I say thank you, and Connie thanks you. She was also much better than I about communication on social media. While I reserved it for irrelevant current event talks, jokes, geek rants, etc., she used it in a more meaningful way. Although we all know she was pretty solid in the jokes department. It's going to take me some time to get a rhythm here on FB, but I'm going to use it how Connie used the Caring for Connor page. Not only did she post important information about Connor's medical journey, but it was therapeutic for her. Many times, as she shared items, she helped someone else or someone helped us. I'm going to turn to my Facebook family quite a bit, and it goes on. But anyway, that's just an idea of like his statement following the murder. And the friends in the episode also described the aftermath, so like the wake and the funeral, very strangely. And they said at the time they never, ever, ever, ever suspected he could have had anything to do with it.
Right.
But he was acting very weird. And again, they said like maybe it was shock. We just didn't know. But I want to point out a couple of those things. So first of all, at the wake, the friends, and they were like best friends, these three, and they lived in the same neighborhood, and they called themselves like the Three Amigos, and they are BFFs, right? So the two friends come to Connie's wake, and they are standing in line to pay their respects, and like 3 hours in, they finally reach Rick, and they're just like, we're so sorry. And he goes, how did you know my wife? And they're like, huh? Like they know, like they know each other, like it's just
That's so
very
weird.
odd. And they were like, we just kind of let it go because maybe he's just like in shock and isn't understanding reality.
Weird.
But it would be like me going to your wake and Allison being like, how did you know my partner? It's like,
Yeah.
what? Like, it's just so strange. Like, what do you mean? Like, what an odd question.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess maybe he was trying to act just so discombobulated that
yeah
I don't know.
And like maybe that wasn't even part of it, I don't know, but it they were just noting some very strange behaviors. Like they stuck around at the burial and he just like left almost immediately, like he wasn't part of it. He apparently texted the group of friends like, hey, great neighbors, what's some good takeout around here, like days or weeks after the murder. And they were like, what? Like, he's like, where do we get good takeout? Where do you usually order from? And they're like, why are you texting us this? Like, why is that even on your mind right now?
Yeah. Also, like the Facebook post seemed a little odd. Like it felt like it was more like, I'll take on these tasks versus like, we're heartbroken.
Yeah. It's sort of like, oh, my kids need me now more than ever. And obviously we have hindsight, 2020, but it's like, oh, God, what a jackass.
I don't know. Also, like, I guess people heal differently, and that's how anyone would have justified it, I guess, at the time.
Yeah, exactly. So neighbors are not really aware that this is going on, but behind the scenes, police are starting to add up all these red flags. And something that they also talked about was another suspect who kind of came up around this time, because when they asked neighbors, did they have any enemies? Pretty much everyone in the neighborhood said yes. There is a contractor that they had just sued in small claims court, and they had a very bad relationship with him. Apparently, he had promised to do some work on the bathroom, but then the changes that they wanted were too expensive, and they refused to, they didn't want to, whatever, classic like contractor conflict situation, and they ended up suing him in small claims court and settled. But they said, this has been like a very fraught relationship with this guy. And so, if you're looking for someone who may have had a motive, check this contractor out. So they do check out the contractor. And first of all, he's pretty small, not over 6 feet, not stocky, and his voice does not sound like Vin Diesel. So pretty right away, they're like, this isn't really a fit. Also, his alibi completely checks out. So this guy's off the table, and now nobody else can think of a possible suspect who would have wanted her dead. So as they're, asking Richard over and over again for his story, again, it continues to change every single time. So originally, he says he sees Connie leave the house for her spinning class. Then he says, oh, wait, actually, I left before her while she's still in the garage. He originally said, I left for work at 8:30. Then he changed it to 8:20. Then he changed it to later, then earlier. And when they checked his phone, there was no alarm notification. And he said, oh, I deleted it. Okay. By the way, I don't know. I know this was several years ago, but like on ADT, you can like see, like, why would you delete whatever? It doesn't matter because it's all bullshit. But he said the intruder forced him to the chair in a headlock. But then later he said the intruder used some sort of special pressure point technique to grab him by the wrist and walk him like a dog to the chair.
Okay.
Things just were not clear. They were like, well, what do you think these papers were that he was burning? He's like, I have no idea. Couldn't tell you. He said, the more I talk to you, the police, the less I remember, because the questioning apparently was freaking him out. I don't know.
Okay. I don't know. I'm just waiting for it to make sense.
Well, you're going to wait a long time.
Yeah.
So there was also the question of Richard's injuries, or more notably, lack thereof. According to Richard, he was thrown around the room by a huge assailant who then pushed him down a flight of stairs, dragged him across the room, bound him to a chair, threatened him with a blowtorch, and started gently stabbing him with a box cutter. And the issue was that according to his medical records, when he was examined right after the attack, and again in the following days and weeks, there were virtually zero signs of any trauma on his body. There were no defensive wounds. There were no push down the stair wounds. There were no burn marks. Nothing matched up to the story he was telling. According to the arrest warrant specifically, there were, quote, no bruises, abrasions, other cuts, or lacerations noted on the body of Debate to indicate any struggle had occurred. Not even on his pressure points on his wrists that he said the guy was using to drag him across the room.
Obviously, like I guess if I'm going to commit a murder and then look like I was another victim, I would have to commit to like also hurting myself.
You'd think.
But, like, he was clearly too afraid to actually hurt himself. Like,
yeah, he's like, oh, well, he was just very gentle with the X-Acto knife or whatever.
It's like, well, was he gentle with the gun 5 minutes ago?
Yeah.
No?
It doesn't make any sense. And it's like, ugh, what a bastard to be like, oh, well, he didn't want to hurt me, but...
Like, you might as well have made up a story that you showed up after. Like...
And why even say, I fell down the stairs when, like, you don't even have a bruise?
Yeah.
It's just like, you didn't even need to add that. Like, he was just adding shit to make it seem... And you know what they say? People who lie add way more detail than people who are telling the truth because they're trying to prove their story. And it's like,
yeah,
I'm seeing how this is happening because he's saying the same details but differently every time. He's adding shit to the story. It's like, something is fishy here, my friend. So he had these very shallow, superficial punctures from this box cutter, and they lined up in a way with such an angle and consistency that, guess what? They appeared to be self-inflicted. What a surprise. After the exam at the hospital, he pretty much walked away without a scratch, or maybe with like a scratch, and that's it.
But a gentle one, a
very gentle stab in his arm, and he left without any pain. So police... This is a good question that I hadn't thought of until I read this research, which is that police asked Richard why he never got up and checked on Connie while he was waiting for help. He had a free arm, like you noticed, a free leg. He was able to get to the alarm panel, and it seemed like he was physically fine. So why were you lying on the floor of the kitchen moaning in pain when you had no injuries? And why didn't you go check on your wife who was shot downstairs? It didn't make any sense. So Richard said, well, I was afraid that someone would come back and shoot me if I did anything. But like, he was screaming for help and calling 911 and hitting the alarm panel. So that's a bullshit excuse. Things started looking worse for Richard when they found out about his affair. And he actually had told them pretty early on, even in the hospital bed, he was already talking about this affair. because he kind of wanted to get ahead of it. And he's like, hey, I know this sounds crazy, but like I'm having an affair and I want to get it out there before it comes back on me. And in the Dateline episode, you can literally hear the beeping of like the hospital.
Oh, God.
Like you hear like the beeping because he's in a hospital. And so he's telling them, you know, I have been in this relationship. Apparently, this affair has been going on for 7 years on and off. And most notably of all, they find out that his girlfriend is pregnant.
Oh, shit.
Uh-oh. And when questioned, Richard assured the officers that not only did Connie know about the affair and the pregnancy, but she was considering co-parenting the child with Richard and his girlfriend in order to keep their families together for the sake of their sons. He clearly didn't know about this memo in her phone that said reasons for a divorce because...
Well, if he had, that certainly would have been deleted? Before yeah.
Yeah, exactly. This is nuts. In fact, he said Connie wanted a third child, according to Richard, but she was having trouble conceiving. So they recruited Sarah as a surrogate. But when the surrogacy didn't work out, like getting semen, they went the, quote, old-fashioned way, and he just had sex with her to get her pregnant.
Oh, my God.
I know. So he's
what
telling
a story.
What a story. He's telling this story and saying, oh, it was actually her idea. And they were like, what? They're like, wait, so your girlfriend or your wife was okay with you having sex with your girlfriend to get her pregnant? And he said, oh, no, it was actually her idea. And it's like,
okay.
Likely story. So that's what he's telling people. And in that same conversation, beeping still going on in the background, he starts to change the story. They pressed him a little bit on this, saying like, really? Your wife really wanted this? And he said, well, actually, it started off as cheating and she didn't know about it at first. And he said, but Connie cheated too. And they never found any evidence of that, by the way. Finally, after a little more pressing, he admits that the whole affair was a secret from Connie. She had no idea and the pregnancy was an accident.
Well, duh. Why didn't you just start with that?
Because he thought he could outsmart them.
Also, like, wouldn't they have just interrogated her and she would have been like, yeah, obviously the wife does not know about this?
Yeah. Well, I will say, I misspoke a little bit because he did still at this point insist that Connie knew about the affair. Not that she knew about the pregnancy, not that she had anything to do with the pregnancy, but he said she did know about the affair and was fine with it. But of course, when they find this memo saying reasons for divorce and there's no, like, he's having an affair on the top of the list, they're like, I don't think she knew about this.
Yeah, I don't believe you.
Yeah, because if she knew that he was spending $1,000 on a credit card in her name, but didn't specify on his girlfriend, she probably didn't know. You know, I think that would have made the cut. The note did, however, say, quote, he is never happy. Nothing I ever do is good enough. He swears at me. He was not sympathetic when my dad got diagnosed. He let me just cry without helping. He never keeps his promises to me in regards to getting my son's medical records together for doctor's appointments. He teaches the kids nothing. He never helps with their homework. I have to do it all. He gets mad at me. He drinks and drives. He just screams all the time. So this was in the list of, you know, why to get it or reasons to get a divorce. She had also, as they went through her technology, her computer, they found out she had been searching how to avoid traumatizing children during divorce. Which makes me feel extra sad because obviously
she was clearly thinking about the whole family.
About the family, the kids. And then, like, of course, the most traumatizing thing of all happened. It's just horrible. 6 and 9. She was also researching how to settle on shared custody. She wanted their potential divorce to be peaceful, to keep the kids safe and, you know, protected. She did have a couple pros on the list, just a couple. And she mentioned that he sometimes babysits the children. Yikes.
Gross.
Sometimes gives her neck rubs, and that he's fun to be around when he's in a good mood. Those were the only benefits to being in a relationship with this guy.
So that he does, so he every now and then rubs your neck.
Yeah.
And then every now and then agrees to watch the children he chose to have
Exactly.
with you.
Yeah, he babysits them. Like,
and then every now and then he's in a good mood, and during that good mood wants to spend it with you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sounds like
you
a
nailed
real
it.
catch.
Sounds like a catch.
Yeah.
And she didn't even, and that's why when they said, like, they looked through it and this affair wasn't on the list, like, it would have been in there. This was an extremely detailed note. Like, all of her friends and family said too, you know, if she had known, she'd be pissed. Like, she wouldn't have just said, okay, and moved on, right?
Yep.
The list is extensive, okay? This list about why she should get a divorce. She never mentioned an affair, never mentioned a pregnancy. It did not seem like she knew. So the woman Richard was seeing, they had known each other since middle school. She even had read a reading at Richard and Connie's wedding. Yikes.
That's awful.
At first, she didn't like the idea of breaking up this marriage. She said she didn't want to break up a family. And when she realized she was pregnant, she planned to raise the baby on her own. But Richard kept insisting to her that his marriage to Connie was unhappy and he wanted to raise their child together. And so, of course, when Richard is telling police this, he knows this is a bad look. He said to the police, this story popped up like a frickin' soap opera. He's like, can you believe the odds? You know?
Yeah.
Wow, what a weird coinkydink. However, more issues came up because friends knew Connie as being very vocally anti-gun. She was afraid of guns. She never wanted one in the house. So it would not be her instinct to run and grab a gun if someone were in the house. It would be her
Especially
instinct
like
probably to leave.
Also in every horror movie, like the first thing you yell at people about is running down into the basement when you could run out the door.
Yeah. And so he's like, well, that's where I kept my gun. And it's like, her friends were like, she would not have gone and gotten that gun. She wouldn't have even thought of the gun, you know?
Yeah, she would have ran.
And the only reason there was a gun in the house, by the way, is because Richard said he became worried months earlier when someone apparently tried to break into his car in the driveway through the windshield. And he said he wanted to get a gun to protect himself. But guess what? When they went back through the officer's report, the responding officer had noticed that the windshield had been broken from the inside of the car. So he broke his own windshield and then said, well, I guess I should get a gun because we're not safe. So
Which is super... I was going to say that, so he was months out on this.
Isn't that horrible? Like, so sinister.
Like, to know that for months, like, or I guess she never had to worry about it, I guess, but, like, if she knew that the last several months you were living with this person, he plans on killing you.
It's horrific. Horrific. Or for the kids to find out, you know? It's just horrible. And he used that incident as the excuse to buy the gun, and by the time of the crime, he had 2 guns. So the gun he purchased in October was the gun that he used to kill Connie in December. Now, this is where things take an interesting twist, because with evidence mounting, police looked at some unassuming clues that Richard clearly had not thought of, and that was the data from Connie's Fitbit tracker. They were able, so she had a Fitbit that she attached to her waistband, and he did not think to remove that or destroy it or hide it, because they were able to track her steps, her movement, her heart rate, and they were able to follow her morning from the time she woke up when she put the thing on, went to the YMCA, got home at 9:23, and at the time that he had originally said she was supposedly running from the intruder, her heart rate and movement were normal. She was calm, just walking around the house. And in the time between Connie coming home from the YMCA and her last movement, which is so horrific, at 10:05 when she died, she had walked over 1,200 feet in total. And investigators measured this. They said if Connie had come home, walked in from the car, heard Richard yelling to run, and sprinted toward the basement, she would have traveled maybe 150 feet, not 1,200. So minutes later, after she's supposedly running from this intruder, the second floor motion sensor went to sleep and like nobody was up there. So it's not even tracking movement. And meanwhile, he's saying he went upstairs, found this intruder in the closet, and they're having this big battle. No, the motion sensors upstairs were off. Nothing was happening. Meanwhile, at 9:40, again, while she's supposedly fighting for her life, Connie was posting multiple videos to Facebook, and minutes later, she sent a message on Facebook Messenger to a friend, all of which was during this time when Richard said she was fighting for her life with this home invader and was within 30 minutes before she was killed. So the data did not stop there because in the months leading up to the attack, they were able to search Richard's search history.
Great.
Yep. Guess what he Googled?
Everything from how long until a body starts to smell and how to shoot somebody quietly and how to the huge, I guess.
The huge. It's so fucking stupid.
How to kill your wife and get away with it without your two sons finding out right away.
It might as well be, you know? He wrote, deadly over-the-counter pill combinations, tasteless, poison, easily available. I bet he searched tasteless poison first and then was like, no, these are too complicated to get.
This is how I know that like we don't actually have FBI agents like staring like individually tasked with each of us, because you know people say like, oh, my FBI agent obviously knows I want this jacket because it keeps showing up on my computer. If we did, that FBI agent was sleeping on the goddamn job that day. He should have been like, Mr. President, this guy is like obviously going to kill his wife next week.
Mr. President, we have somebody we need to intercept because he's trying to easily obtain, I don't know, arsenic. Okay.
Yeah.
How many apple seeds does it take to
right?
Like, it's so fucking. It's so cliche, you know. It's embarrassing. So he writes tasteless poison, easily available, untraceable, homemade poison. How much ethylene glycol is lethal? And he also Googled Connie's spin class schedule at 9:45, which so he's Googling during the time frame where he said he's battling it out with this home invader. Like he's even leaving a trail.
I feel like even, okay, I promise I don't have any murderous tendencies, but if I were to even think about committing murder in the year of 2023,
right,
I would think, well, technology would absolutely out me. So like, why would I, like, there's no, like between Facebook, Fitbit, his texting, the security app.
Who do we think we're kidding that we're going to get away with it, right? Like, who do we think we're kidding?
I would, even if I wanted to commit some sort of crime and technology would somehow, you know, let the cat out of the bag, I'm not even trying it at that point. I'd be like, well, it's just not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. And like, even when you do take measures to prevent looking guilty, then you look guilty because, well, why would you turn your phone off for 3 hours when you've never turned your phone off before? Is it to avoid being traced? Like it's really a hard thing to do. And I think the only way a lot of these people get away with it is because they just somehow convince a jury or, you know, or it's just classic like justice system thing of like there's just, I don't know, things just take too long or things are bungled or they don't look at evidence properly. I don't know. I feel like I would not trust my odds at trying to beat technology, you know?
Oh yeah.
I mean, but then I hear about people like this who don't even go in incognito mode and I'm like, God, fucking amateurs, you know?
Yeah.
Like, not that I condone any of this, but
it's one of those things of like people who are just like, I guess one of the main characteristics of a killer at this point is like absurd amount of confidence.
Yep.
But like for you to really think you could get away from the internet, I mean, there's a reason why there's like government doomsday preppers that are terrified of the internet. Like they know that they're being tracked. I know without being a doomsday prepper that I'm being tracked.
Yeah.
How is like Joe Schmo who thinks he's apparently king and can kill whoever he wants and get away with it, how is he so blissfully unaware that Google and any app you use and your phone in general and the internet and all of it's watching you? Like,
like you type something into Google, what do you think a search history is?
Like, how did you think you would get away with it? I just don't understand the like complete. It's got to be some sort of factor on like spontaneity of like, oh, I'll figure it out when we get there. Yeah. It's like, what do you mean? Like you have to plan.
Or like just an element of narcissism of like they won't look there, you know? Like who knows what the thought process is if there is one. And you know, I know it was like the 2000, like it was what now 2014. So what 8 years ago? I'm so bad at math.
No, I mean, technically now it's 9 years ago, but it's really eight-ish.
But
that was still plenty of time for someone
People
to understand how the internet
history.
Works.
Like you know about Google search history. I mean, you Google like that is just if a jury's gonna buy anything, it's like, oh, he Googled how to kill his wife. Hello, like how much more obvious can you get? Whether it's circumstantial or not, it's still pretty fucking damning to say, oh, he was searching how to kill her and then she just happened to die. Just like so, it's horrible. And to know that he was in the under the same roof with her and the kids and searching like how to poison her is
also
so
like it
fucked
like
up.
a bit of a sidestep, but the fact that he was looking up how to poison her to get away with it that way, and he basically was able to figure out it would be impossible to do. So then he just resorted to
He's like,
shooting her?
this elaborate tale about getting like my windshield broken. I mean, like, it's horrible how much he wanted her dead. It's
Like,
it's
and for what? Like, for
fucked
what?
up.
Like, what was your reason? Like, really?
To
Like,
really run away with Sarah and like raise the baby.
I just can't imagine ever.
It's beyond me. It really is
Mm.
beyond me. So he's searching her spin class to figure out what time she's going to get home. And this just adds like a sinister twist here, because the day before Connie's death, she and Richard had a disagreement, and usually her texts with him were very very sweet, and she called him Sweet Pea and Buttercup. Oh, by the way, they looked at the text between him and Sarah, and the day before the murder, he called her his, oh God, what did he call her? His love nugget or something.
Ew.
Yeah, something weird like that.
Gross.
Like, but the day before nugget, I don't like it.
That's kind of, it's crazy. Okay, anyway.
I don't even know if that's right. I could probably be totally off, but it was something that kind of made me go, oh, you know. Probably somebody out there's like, that's what I say to my partner. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to.
I mean, I call mine Stinky Witch.
I
So
know. I'm
really
not trying to yuck anyone's yum. I think it's just the fact that he's texting this woman under the same roof while he's trying to Googling how to poison his wife, and he's texting his lover. You know, it just adds like a sinister element to it. But anyway, the day before Connie's death, they had this argument, and it was about a bill. She found a bill, and he was lying about it. So it sounds like she was in the right and was cornering him. And she said, well, once again, I have to clean up your mess. And she said, quote, great day off and Merry fucking Christmas.
Oh.
So they were in bad shape that day. Shortly after her death, Richard tried to collect on Connie's $450,000 life insurance policy, but the insurance company denied him. And apparently, when Richard found out his girlfriend was pregnant, he had started taking large sums of money out of their bank accounts, his and his wife's, as much as $175,000.
Jeez.
Yes. In January of 2016, he took $90,000 out of a Fidelity account that belonged to Connie. After a lengthy investigation, Richard was arrested in April of 2017. The warrant was nearly 50 pages long. They had gathered so much evidence to arrest him. There was kind of a hiccup because, like I said, these things move so slowly sometimes in the justice system that March of 2020 is when the court date was scheduled. And what do we think happened March of 2020?
I think he couldn't make it in that day.
I think it was postponed due to a little illness that was going around.
So did he end up just like getting house arrest for 2 years or something?
Yep.
Shut the fuck up.
Yep. He was able to post his $1 million bond and was basically free until the trial started. So, you know, living life. I think Connie's brother described it as like the only one dancing and singing in the street is him. Like he's the only one having a good time. Everyone else is like devastated about this loss, is reeling, is trying to recover. And he's just like, woo, I'm free, you know, and fucking around.
I can't. That's just the cruelest. Like, where did his kids go during quarantine too, by the way?
I think they were with him. I'm pretty positive.
He got to just raise his kids and just basically live like everyone else, as free as everyone else.
Once he went to jail, they were moved, I believe, to their grandparents' house or just another family member. But yeah, he was with them for quite a time. Finally, the trial did take place. It was about 5 weeks long. It was revealed during the trial that there was gunshot residue on Richard's shirt, and Richard gave very unconvincing testimony. Also, they had Sarah, the pregnant girlfriend, on the stand, and she was kind of defending him. She was a little abrasive. They said she wasn't like belligerent by any means, but she was like pretty abrasive, and it was clear that she was, you know, not looking to put him away, if that makes sense. Wow. Either way, Richard was found guilty after the trial, and this was August of 2022. He finally, 7 years after the crime, was sentenced to 65 years in prison. And after the hearing outside the courthouse, Connie's brother said, "It enables us to get a little bit of closure, even though it won't bring Connie back. As a family, we can move forward." So that is the story. I mean, taken way too soon. And to post that on Facebook and be like, "Oh, she was taken too soon, and my kids need me now more than ever." It's like, you just took their mother away.
Yeah, they don't need you.
You took their fucking mother away. They needed both of you, and you just fucking took both of them away. Like, it's beyond me how you could do this.
Wow. But do we know where the kids are today? They live now with a family member, I guess?
You know, I'm not sure. I think since they're minors, they don't really share much about that. What I heard was that they went to, a family member.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's so sad. I can't even imagine. Like, their life now, they have to just
upended, you know?
Make it work. And like, no, that shouldn't have had to happen.
And I always wonder about that feeling of, like, if a parent is in jail for the murder of your other parent, like, do you have to just tell yourself, like, they didn't do it, they're innocent? I mean, I'm sure it's like a constant struggle of, like, it's still your dad, but, like, do you reject that relationship? You know, I just always wonder how that is, and I'm sure it's different for everyone, but it's just so dark.
Wow.
But yeah, so, you know, and I also want to point out, a lot of times people call this the Fitbit murder, but her family has kind of said they'd prefer to shy away from that because it's kind of...
I'm sure Fitbit would also like to shy away from that.
Yeah, well, that's true too. That's true too. But yeah, so, you know, I think it's just kind of makes it a little too lighthearted of a...
Yeah, makes sense.
Phrase. But yeah, so you know what? This fucking guy, the husband, did it.
Wow. Everyone send good energy to those kids because they really need it.
I know.
Wow. I don't think you've done one that was that recent in a long time either.
Yeah, I felt that way too. I felt like this was very much one, like, ripped from the headlines, you know.
Yeah, it was like 5 months ago.
2022 being the trial. Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Crazy.
Well, thank you for the story.
You are so welcome.
I'm glad I coughed and sneezed through it a lot less than last
too.
week. Other than that, I don't know. Is there any news we got to tell people? Anything we got going on?
Listen, we're about to be on tour. Maybe are already on tour.
We're already on tour. I think this is our first week on tour, or last week was.
You're right. The day this comes out, we just did our first shows, Phoenix and Anaheim.
Whew, and I'm really hoping I didn't pass out on stage.
I'm hoping you did, because what a fun headline grabber that would be.
That would, for the PR.
Extra.
I'm fine to pass out on stage as long as it gets us good marketing.
You know what's funny is we've always said that. We're like, if anything ever happens to me, like, use it to your advantage.
Yeah, just use the shit out of it.
I've
also told
Chris story, write a book.
I've also told Christine, I was like, the only way I'm going to get through this particular part of my medical journey is through humor. So, like, if I pass out, if it's in a funny way, I'm going to need you to laugh really fucking hard.
You're going to need to take a photo, put it on TikTok, go viral.
Yeah. Do whatever you need career-wise if I pass out, please.
You know I will. And honestly, obviously the same goes for you. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate
that. Use it to your advantage. Get all the likes you can.
Well, good luck to me and good luck to you. Good luck to everybody on any particular journey they're on.
Yes.
And I guess if you want to hang out more, we've got our after chat, and I hope everyone goes and checks it out.
Yeah, I'll tell you more about the birds of Kentucky.
Wee! Okay, sounds good.
Bye.
And
that's
whoa, why?
Whoa, wee.
Yeah, drink.